Women's show. And yes, once again, I'm super excited about this episode. Why? Let me introduce you to who we have today on this episode of Empowering Women's Show. We have the amazing Manisha Tailor MBE. What can I tell you about Manisha Tailor MBE? Well, apart from her being a teacher, author, coach, mental health advocate, she's the founder and the director of a company called Swaggerlicious Limited. She'll tell you about that in a second. On top of that, of many things that she's achieved, I'm going to give you a flavor of them, right? So in 2002, she pioneered one of the first ever girls football programs. She was also involved with something called the Wembley Learning Zone with Rachel Yankee. Now, Rachel Yankee is like a legend for me as a lifelong Arsenal fan, and she's also a pioneer in the same things that Manisha's been doing. But Manisha's experience isn't just about sports. She has personal experience as a young carer in her own personal life. She's also became the first South Asian woman to become an academy coach for a pro football club. And then from there, she went one step further and then became the first South Asian full-time coach at Queen's Park Rangers Football Club. And when it comes to boards and steering groups, that I can only fit a few into these bullet points, but she's on the FA Asian Women in Football, the British Asian in Sports and Physical Activity Steering Group. She's also part of the FA Mental Health Consultation Group. And it goes on and on and on and on. But here is her thing, especially as someone who's a major crazy football advocate. She's got an MBE in 2017 for her services for football and diversity in sport. And she's already got, in her coaching journey, she's got a UEFA B. I just want you to understand, it's like it takes the top managers and coaches at football clubs to get UEFA licenses. And the ones that you know at the top of the game, they have the A license. So she has a UEFA B and she's on her way to get her A license, which is no mean feat. And she lives her life, we talk about people's mission, she lives her life by the statement of believe it, see it, and do it. And I kid you not, that's who she is. So without further ado, let's bring her on. Hey Manisha, you there?
Hi Harry. Yeah, I'm here. Thanks a lot for inviting me. Really looking forward to speaking to you.
Likewise, my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time out for being with us. And Manisha, I gave everybody, like I said, a taste or a flavour of all the things that you've achieved. And as we do on this show, I always want people to get a flavour of, where have you come from? What's that story? What got you to get into diversity, into mental health, into football and empowering women? So give people a little bit of a flavour of, who is Manisha Tailor MBE?
So my love for football started when I was an 8-year-old. So I've got a twin brother, and we come from a sporty family, actually. So sport was a big part of what we did, but football was quite prominent. My dad's a huge Liverpool fan, so my family. I never quite was. My cousin supported Everton, so I was, I think I was in Everton for a little while. I think Wimbledon for a little while, Arsenal a little bit later, and obviously QPR now. So I went round the mills with clubs, but I also grew up in a time where there were very few women that played football, very few young girls that played. So in the 80s, when I was growing up, I didn't see anything wrong. And this will come on to, when we really speak about difference in perceptions and stereotyping. I'm a young 9-year-old. You're just playing, and I played with my brother, I played with my cousins and my family. I played for my school team, and unfortunately, there were very few opportunities for me to progress further, simply because at that time we played mixed football, and when I went on to secondary school, the first thing I asked one of my PE teachers was that. I'd really like to play. Aren't there any teams? And he said, well, no, Manisha, unless you can find some more girls, that's pretty much that. So I played with my best friend, and we were the only two in our school uniform that would play on the grass at lunchtime. I did, when I was 9, go on trial. So for my Barnet Ladies, which was kind of the girl centre of excellence that was local to me at the time, and I got in. But I always knew that some of the challenges would be around perceptions. So definitely for my mum, it was around, being a young South Asian girl. She didn't see any other South Asian girls, which is why we talk about visibility, and that being important.
Yeah.
You can have the self-belief. So I believed that, I was a good player, I could play. And unless you have visibility to help you along that way, particularly as a young person, that becomes really difficult. So it wasn't the case of lacking parental support, because my mum didn't mind me playing, but it was easier me playing at school because I was already at school. She would take my brother at school too. Whereas this now required an additional commitment, which comes with whole heaps of other implications. So I soon realized that I'm probably not going to be a player. And the women's game, in how it looks like now, certainly didn't look like that in the 80s. And it's only evolved over time very recently. So even when I grew older and I was playing Sunday league as in my 20s, you're not really coached, because again, it was a great social, but by that time you've missed a significant number of like crucial years in terms of playing. So that was pretty much that. But my love and passion was always there, and I grew a love for child development when I was doing my GCSEs, and I also found I was good at it. So I went on to become a primary school teacher, and through that time, particularly when I started uni, so this was at 18, me and my twin brother, for our 18th, my mum took us to America to celebrate. And also it was a time where we would both be starting university. And bearing in mind, my sister was only 5 at the time, because there's a big age gap. Now, we lived, and I'll say use the word normal, a pretty normal childhood in the respect of, we had a great family circle. There were great and strong relationships with everybody. And little did we know how quickly this was about to change. So when we were at Universal Studios, and I distinctly remember my brother just turned around and he said, there's people after me, I can see things. And we would look around and you would just see families, people enjoying themselves, having fun. Now, one of the challenges is that you're in a completely different country and you're on holiday. What you're also trying to absorb and really understand is what is going on, because you've got somebody who is saying to you that they can see things that you cannot see, and they are adamant that these things are real. So when we came back, as much as I'd like to say now that we went and seek support straight away, we didn't. We didn't do that, and that purely because of the taboo and the stigma around mental health, and even saying that this possibly could be a mental health issue. Hadn't experienced it before, didn't really know what was going on, so we just kept it quiet, and pretty much, other than immediate family, just dealt with it, and therefore, as a result of that and not sharing, it became progressively worse, where we had to defer his entry, and he went through a period of where he was then sectioned under the Mental Health Act, and had absolutely no awareness of who we were, his surroundings. And it was like you are looking at a completely different person, somebody that you spent your whole life with that doesn't even know who you are.
Yeah. And Manisha, for those that don't know, what was it? Your brother got diagnosed with schizophrenia, is that right?
Yeah, so it went because, and this is it, when you're so new to this in terms of what mental health is, it started off with, he was hallucinating. So it started off with, it was schizophrenia, depression, and even now, so we're 22 years on, they still actually can't diagnose it, because he's such a unique case in the respect of coming out of the initial part of being sectioned to now. Although we take care of him at home, he's got some awareness, but actually hasn't verbally communicated as we do for a good 18 years. But he speaks to the voices he hears. And you really have to break things down, and it develops you as a person, because there's so many things that you have to think about and consider in terms of really recognizing and having a little bit more of an emotional connection with somebody who does not verbally communicate. You have to do everything for them. We have carers who work full time. My mum and dad and myself are also there, and so is my sister. But it definitely taught me about myself, because I evolved and developed as a person, and I've been, I feel, on a personal journey, putting professionalism and where that developed aside, that I went through a period of not really understanding, I guess, being selfish maybe in some respect around what my life was like, and perhaps in some respect taking it for granted. Not really understanding, and we talk about understanding difference, although I thought naturally I would understand difference. I look back now and I think, no, I don't think I did, because I didn't understand what it was like to be among people with disabilities and mental health and that type of thing. So it's definitely taken me on a personal journey, and I guess as I evolved as a person, with having a lot more empathy towards others, and building that wider network and those relationships, and particularly with external agencies through, especially in the latter part of my life, my professional work developed, and they both married, because when I became a primary school teacher, I was a lot more empathetic towards PSHE and social and emotional development, because I understood it. And I understood it because I was living it each day on what this would be like. And I'd look at the young people in my class or within the school and think that was my brother. And would I want anybody to go through something similar? No, I wouldn't. And there was a real lack of resource and conversation around mental health at that time. So I qualified in 2001, and mental health wasn't spoken about then in schools. And we're still fighting for that to happen now, although it's a lot more progressive and definitely a lot better. And so, I'm particularly sorry around the fact that, you come from a community group where it's just shut down. People don't want to talk about it, and it's almost seen as, well, if I do, something bad's going to happen. And in that respect, actually, in all the schools I worked in, I didn't once let the head teacher know or the senior managers know that this is what I was going through. And I think to my own detriment, and I wish I had done, because I feel that.
Yeah, I would always say it's everything I talk about when I say find your voice and serve. Sometimes it's the things that we've held back for so long, and sometimes we've had to do that, and sometimes we think we're doing it to protect, and then thank God, thank the universe, you eventually found your voice, because like you say, whatever reason you didn't want to share it, didn't express it. We're always on that. We don't want to make things worse. I heard you just say that, but you found your voice and you went on. You not just in teaching, then sport, and that compassion, that level of care, that level of understanding, that the experience with your brother and family and other people, shaped you. And so carry on with the journey, because it's that then took you, I don't know, you went from teaching to even being a qualified head teacher and all the sports thing. How did all of that come about then?
Well, because I was so angry, and this is where, and I'm talking about the time of not sharing and not opening up, that manifested in me becoming frustrated and angry, and I'll be lying to say that I'm not angry now. I'm just less angry. And what I've done is I've found my own strategies of managing that. So what I did was I just invested and channeled that negative energy into work. So when I qualified in 2001, I very quickly became a senior leader. And people who know about primary schools, you're pretty much head of all departments. So I was art coordinator, I've been science, extended schools,
One salary and 10 jobs. That's it.
Yeah, exactly that, exactly that. And I found that, although I've always been ambitious as a person anyway, but I think for me, my go-to was work, because I really found it difficult to cope with what was going on at home, because I couldn't understand it. And for me, it was a big deal to not have that relationship with my brother that I did have, because we did everything together. So my work became my go-to, and as a result of investing lots of time within what I was doing at work, I started to excel, and then excelled as a senior leader, and then was successful on getting onto the national professional qualification for headship. But I was a 28 when I became an assistant head. I was 30 when I got onto the qualification, and I was a deputy head. And I qualified at 31. Now that's very young to qualify in the grand scheme of things as a head teacher, or certainly be somebody who they say can be ready to maybe take on a headship role. But in the duration of that time, I fell out of love with football because of my anger and frustration, but then found a way of reshaping how I thought. And it was when I was working at the Swan and Orion School in 2002 that I looked out the window and I just saw the kids playing in the car park. And I thought, you know what? You've got a lot of young people that have a passion and love for this game. And I'm sat in my classroom looking at them and feeling sorry for myself, really, that I want to be out there enjoying it. But at the same time, I had this fear of, if I reconnect, it means I'm going to be happy. And actually, I should feel guilty about that. So after reshaping and reflecting on how I saw things, I spoke to the head teacher, who was also a massive Leicester City fan, Mr. Umesh Raja, a huge Leicester City fan. And he said to me, "Yeah, what a great idea, because that they didn't have anybody who would take that on board." So I just started it as a lunchtime club, primarily for boys. This is also bearing in mind it was a Hindu faith school, and we're talking about the early 2000 part of a generation where South Asians in football wasn't heard of. Wasn't we had a couple, but we were still fighting for equality in that respect.
And we still are.
Yeah, exactly, and we still are. And then had some girls who were looking at me, because I started to get involved quite actively, and then the girls said, "Oh, what about us?" And it grew from there. And and that's something I'll always be proud of, particularly within the school and the community. And then from there, that kind of followed me into the different schools I worked with. And I didn't have my coaching qualifications at that time, but through meeting Rachel at one of the schools I worked in Brent, she introduced me to how I can go about getting my level 1 and my level 2. And it really went from there. And if I'm honest, at that time and during those 10 years from 2001 to 2011, I didn't once think that I would come out of education full time, because what I wanted was to have my own school where sport would be a big part of helping young people learn. And that was primarily my focus, and I have well-being as a big focus. It was purely personal circumstance. And sometimes I just think, things happen in life and they take you on another journey. So my mum had a triple heart bypass, and I was also doing my master's in leadership, and there was a lot going on within that year. So I opted to come out of full-time work, manage what was going on, hand in my dissertation, and thought, right, January 2012, I would like to go back into the school. So I was just going to take a term out. Anyhow, that didn't happen, because lo and behold, the people who I'd connected with within football got back in touch and said, "Oh, well, now that you're no longer full time, can you come and do a little bit with us?" And that's where I found a real love again for really being in football, if that makes sense. And
100%. Your energy was released.
and yeah, exactly that. And I just, and when I would go home, I'd be in my kit, and my brother would see me in my kit, and there'd be my equipment, and my brother would keep looking at it, and I could feel that there was something there. So I thought, long and hard about what do I do, because financially you're taking a big risk, but you're also taking a risk with regards to the fact that, well, a perceived risk, because from the family is looking as though, well, you've done 2 degrees, you've done all this work, you're on a substantial amount of money, to now potentially being on hardly any money, and you're reinventing yourself again, and you're starting from the beginning. So the only thing that kept me going in my head, and still does to this day, is the fact that I always go back to what would my brother have wanted to do. And I know that he had a love and passion for sport, and that made my decision. And I haven't looked back since, because what that did was just motivate me and drive me to want to do more, because it's also about helping other people and connecting with other people, and then thinking, while you're on this journey, it's how can you help other people along the journey. And at the time, I was selfishly just thinking about my brother. I wasn't really thinking about the community or women. It was solely, okay, I'm on this journey, I want to help other people with mental health, I can keep connected with my brother. But what I found through the journey, which kind of lended itself to me working in football and where I am now, is making these wider connections. I was finding that this is also impacting other people. I had more and more women asking me about how they can get involved in sport, and how they can start on this journey. More and more people from within the community asking me, and wider. And I thought that, this isn't just about me. This is also about other people. And that when you are, in some respect, and I didn't see it as pioneering. I do see it as that now, because I do understand the nature of being the first. And it was never to be the first. It was always, I want to be in football because my brother loves football. That was it. And as a byproduct of me also having other experiences, it helped in my favor. And that's where the transferable skill set and, our journey and other skills that we can bring and cultivate into an environment is really key. Because if it wasn't for that, I don't believe that I would have been able to easily transition and even put myself in a position to apply for the role that I'm in now at QPR. And I don't believe that the other things, so with Swaggerlicious, which is my organisation, the work that I do.
Tell us a bit about Swaggerlicious. What the hell is that? It's like, sound like a bubble gum, but it's like, let people know what Swaggerlicious is.
It's Swaggerlicious, in essence, is me. It's a name that a couple of kids came up with, and it stuck with me. And then I got the company incorporated. But it's a platform that allows me to continue the advocacy work, which is really important to me, around wellbeing and mental health. I recently published a teaching resource with Routledge Education, so around wellbeing, and it's really allowed me to focus on kind of working with other people, working, with that. But for me, like, football isn't. I don't want to be defined by football. I'm not just football, and I don't believe it. Forget the me. I don't believe I'm here to serve the purpose of just football. I think I'm here to serve the purpose of my experiences. And that for me is wider than the game. And one aspect of it is about equality and diversity, specific, looking at gender, looking at race, culture, and religion. But it's also about well-being, because had I not gone through that journey, I wouldn't know what it's like. So I think that it's all of these experiences have made me who I am, which in turn has led to all of the work that I do. So I have my full-time job, but outside of my full-time job, I've also got you know, all the other projects that I'm involved in, and it always goes back to I think the most important thing is that is it having an impact? It's not are you having an impact?
Yeah.
The moment it's not, then you've got to reflect and think, okay, I need to reshape. I need to, I need to reflect, because that's then not working. Because I think otherwise, what's the point? You're doing something, but with what purpose?
Yeah. And listen, as you were speaking, I want to make sure I remind the people that are watching and listening that the reason we choose certain women to come in, and even sometimes some of the male species to come in and talk about how they're empowering other women, and it's what you said about you never went out to get the awards, you never went out to get the MBE, you never went out to go, I was the first. And not many people get to hear that side of your story about what your why is, what drove you then, still drives you. And people need to know that there's so much more to you. But I think now they know what drives you, what continues to drive you, and you're creating that impact, and you're embodying what I talk about to people about find your voice and serve with impact. So let's get on to the little bit about what you're doing now, whether you want to talk about your role at QPR, or whether it's any of the boards that you're on, or give people a little bit of a flavor of some of the day-to-day, or who you work with and how you are creating impact for other people. Give a little bit of flavor of that, and then after that I want to get into you sharing with the viewers and the listeners some of your wisdom that they can take away and use. So go ahead, just give us some of your magical moments of what you do now.
Yeah. So those who are aware of or work in elite sport will know that once you are immersed in this environment, it consumes so much of you. So most of my day is involved at the club, and I probably wouldn't have it any other way. What I really enjoy is, and I suppose I'll be biased because I am at QPR, is people talk about equality and inclusion, but I really believe that we, as a club and as a community, represent the demographic in which we're in, because you can't turn around without seeing somebody of a different culture, of a different race, someone who's of a different gender. And then I think that's really important, and that ultimately keeps me going, because you can end up getting to work at 10 o'clock, you would leave at 9 o'clock and sometimes go home, and you're still making calls on the way home. So that's a long amount of time to be involved in something that you might be unhappy with, you might feel and for various reasons, or to not feel welcome, or to not feel that you're valued. Whereas I love it. I love the fact that there's a mixture of me being able to coach, that there's a big part of the role is administration. And I work very closely with Chris Ramsey, our technical director, and Alex Carroll, our academy director, around the admin of the coaching department, which is developing my skills. But, what it's also doing is helping me connect with other people within the game, because that, I think, brings other dynamics around relationships, how you conduct yourself, particularly as somebody like me who's quite very small in stature, don't come from football first, come from a different sector. So you're in, it's kind of unfamiliar territory, although it will be my 6th season at the club, but it's still to some, it's still a whole new world. When they look at you, they're perceiving you as, first and foremost, as a woman. What does a woman know? Particularly when you're in a senior role, then they're looking at you as a smaller woman. Then they're saying, well, you haven't played the game. And then they're saying, well, hold on a minute, she's South Asian. That's a little bit odd, or that's a little bit strange. So I think what the greatest pleasure I get is the fact that I've got a supportive community, and I've got really, Chris and Alex are fantastic with regards to my support and the club as a whole. But the fact that that what you're doing will open doors for other people. And I think that's key, because once you get into a position of influence, you need to use that. Otherwise, it goes back to what I've said before. You can do what you're doing, but what purpose does it serve? And then I think that particularly with what happened with my brother, it's really got me to reshape the way that I see things in life.
Yeah.
So me being at the club, particularly me, being visibly South Asian as a female, being in the type of role that I'm in, what purpose does it serve? Yes, I want to be good at it, I want to develop, and I still want to learn. But actually, it's got to serve the purpose of not it being tokenism, but it being, look, people out there, you can achieve this too. This is the pathway. Think about these things. These are the things that I've tried. Not saying that it'll work for everyone, but let's have a look. And I think that's key, because ultimately with anything, sometimes you're fighting with opportunity. So not necessarily that you haven't got the qualifications or the skill set, but sometimes you just need a chance, and Chris gave me that chance. It was come in and volunteer. And I think once
I
you're in
want
a
to make
position,
sure I come and say that it's, QPR as a club, for someone who is involved with lots of clubs and elite performers, including Premiership footballers and so on. Even the UK football trials, I'm involved with those guys, and they're trained. We use the QPR training ground in West London. That's where we go. But it's Chris Ramsey and all of these, and everybody else that's involved with QPR took a risk, and they invested in you, and the return on investment for them is huge. They may not be Premiership club in football terms, but they're definitely in top of the Premiership in terms of diversity and equality. There's a big part of you putting that in, and you talk about you being a short stature, and you're a giant within that club, because from the people I talk about, there's QPR Football Club, and then there's you and what you do, because that's where I want to take it now. Because when the Empowering Women show, not only was you someone that was sort of South Asian heritage, it's you as a woman. So, what I want to get to now is your experiences as a woman in a male-dominated field, and then really get to maybe from that, what are the lessons you learned that other women could use, or people that are serving women, maybe vulnerable women, that, because you got an MBE, and you got an MBE for your services, not just in football, but for diversity. And so you've broken so many barriers, so many ceilings, and continue to do so, right? But please share a little bit on that bit about that experience of you as a woman and how other women see you, and young girls. Could you talk about pioneer? You're a trailblazer, but you also have now become a role model for so many people. So share a little bit about that, and then move it into and I'll bring it back for you. Something that the viewers and the listeners, especially the women that are viewing, something that they can take away from you.
Yeah. So I'd be naive or lying to say that it was really easy, because it certainly wasn't. And this thing around judgment and perceptions, society has created this. So society and people look at women or others in a certain way, and you get boxed, and it's really challenging to break that in whatever it is. And whether that's around mental health and well-being, whether that's around the job roles that women should or should not be doing, or if it's, whether it's to do with certain community groups and how they're perceived. And what really helped me was the fact that we have a very diverse board at the club. Our director of football, Les Ferdinand, is Black. Chris Ramsey, our technical director, is Black. But you've also got Alex Carroll as a white male who's very empathetic. And I think that's the key. It's finding people who are in power, people of influence, those at the boardroom who have empathy towards others, so that it's not perceived as, oh, well, you're taking a risk. Because if you were to speak to Chris Ramsey, he will say, I did not take a risk with Manisha, because that then seems as though it's tokenism. Because I came in and I did almost 200 hours of volunteering, and I was only allowed to pick up cones. So anyone who knows Chris will know that he is not letting anybody come in and coach on the pitch unless he has an element of trust, unless he knows that there's going to be compliance with what he is asking for with regards to his philosophy. And if there is a lack of ego, because you have the potential to be coached and developed. Now, having those things helped it it made it easier for him to be able to nurture me, but also having those at the top table who are empathetic, and also, yes, having a diverse board and having people with difference equally helped. And then it became about when you're on the ground, okay, how do you navigate your way through this? Because Chris isn't always there, Alex isn't always there, you know. It's so what do you do? And it was really about you know, building and continuing to develop resilience, listening, because it's an appreciation of the fact that there's a real dynamic of experiences. You've got ex-pros, you've got people who've been within the game a lot longer, some who've come from other experiences, a whole spectrum of age. Because one of the things I was fighting with initially is people thought I was a lot younger than what I am. So when I started volunteering at the club, I was 36. So I'll be 41 this year. And I was probably about 10 to 15 years older than many people, but perhaps didn't look it because of my, you know, I'm only 4'9", you know, and you know, so people perceive you in a certain way. So what I drew back to, and this is where we talk about our own toolbox and developing your own toolbox, was what did I learn and develop as a senior leader in education? This is no different. It's, for me, Chris said to me, look at it as a big school. Okay, just look at it like that. And the moment I started to look at it like that, I started to draw upon other skills that I knew I had, but I was not using or utilizing within this environment. The moment I started to do that, and you know, and show that you have presence, and and sometimes you do have to say, well, actually, I was a former deputy head, or sometimes you have to do that, and not be afraid as a woman to say what's factual, because it's not about being arrogant, it's not about being bold, although there are these stereotypes around women. It's about being honest, and it's about saying, this is actually what I was qualified to do. In addition to that, these are my experiences, this is what I come with. And the moment I started to do that, and then continued with the listening, you know, there's a give and take of an appreciation for the fact that you've got people there who have been there a lot longer, lean on their experience, learn. I kept volunteering. And then over time, and I'm talking about it's taken a good 3 to 4 years, over time, there was less confrontation, because I won't lie to say that there wasn't confrontation. There is still now. But what I've learned is, how do you manage that? Because if I'm honest, that will be in any environment. Some of the schools I worked in was also challenging. Why? Because we were still, particularly in the 2000s, in a position where within the educational industry, I did not see many Black or South Asian head teachers or senior managers. You know, they were predominantly white. So even as a senior manager, as a developing senior leader, that for me was no different to then coming into this world of football. It's just, yes, there are obviously, you know, dynamics that are different. So building that resilience, you know, building the rapport and the relationships, listening, not being afraid to be honest about your experiences, because you're being factual. And you know, from that, it was then building relationships with other people. And that evolved and developed as my role evolved and developed, because it required me to build greater relationships. And it's been a bumpy road, but I feel that the benefit of that, and then people then almost recognizing that you're not here to take over. You're certainly not here to say that you've got all this level of knowledge and you've got more than them. When you know, I think that there has to be an appreciation of the fact that when you have honest, purposeful conversations, what happens is that this bridge that you might have with the other person can break a little bit. Then you've just got to work at it. So by having honesty and transparency, I was able to build and develop better relationships. But what you also have to do is to show and illustrate that you will not be bullied, that you are a strong female within your own right, with experiences, and also an older and mature female. And I think that's equally important, because it can't be that you're just this pushover, that you're experienced. And I think the more you can do that, the more, certainly I found what helped was that, like I said, about less arguments, less confrontation, because what people recognized was with that they could lean on other skills. You're coming in with other experiences. And equally, the most important thing is you are here to help the players, and you are here to help them help the players. So all what I go back to is, what purpose does it serve? Why are you there? Yes, I'm there in my role, but what purpose do I serve? My job is to make sure that Chris and Alex can do their job. In order for that to happen, I have to develop and build relationships within the wider staff. Then I have to look at, what do I need to do to allow that to happen? That means be open, be honest, be patient, listen, be bold, and be factual, and learn how to carry and conduct yourself. But being empathetic allows you to have those greater relationships, and also sharing vulnerability, because it's important that people recognize this is a give and take, and it's a two-way learning experience, because otherwise it becomes you're just telling me what to do. No, I'm not. Actually, we are here to learn for the benefit of the players, because everything has to go back to, even when I was in school, what purpose does it serve? You are here to serve the kids. Why are we in the academy? We are here to serve the kids. That is what we're there to do. So whatever happens, we have to find a way of working to allow that to happen.
There you go. And that's what makes you a service leader in the level that I talk about, authentically and consistently. And so I want to, for those of you that were trying to draw out everything from there, I've heard Manisha say this often, so I'm going to repeat some of those bullet points there, that those strategies that she uses in her role now and all the other roles. One is about sharing your vulnerability as a strength. That's the first thing that we say over and over again if you ever hear her speak. But she talked about purposeful conversations, right? But having that safe space. And overall, it's about investing in relationships. And the way you do that is by having that purpose that you're there to serve, to help each other. And the more, we've heard all the buzzwords, women championing women, but from that place of service and making it safe. So, Manisha, thank you so much for that. I always appreciate that we don't, even when you got the MBE, we haven't been able to connect or speak. And, I know that just from the Asian community, the football community, and especially your parents and your brother and your sister, when you got that MBE, you got that for them. And everything there. So what's next? What's next for Manisha? Let's wrap it up. What's coming next? What's there other than you putting in even more hours into the club and so on? What's next? And then how can people follow your journey?
So I'm really excited to continue my journey at the club. And, as you said earlier, I'm on my A license. So I'm continuing to learn, and hopefully work towards gaining the certification. But it's not just about it's not just about the badge. It is about that learning process. So
who you become.
Exactly that. So develop it within and evolve within my role at the club. Outside of that, it's to continue working with Sporting Equals to really look at how we can continue to use ourselves and our platform to champion women and those from the South Asian community within sport as a whole, not necessarily just football. And it's been a great journey, because just one I'll mention, Kauji Atwal, who's a South Asian female freestyler who I've been able to connect with. And I think, when you're looking at that, and I just think, wow, how inspired am I? And how inspiring would other young people, young girls be, just looking at that? Because for me, that would have been unheard of. So this journey that I'm on with Sporting Equals, with the FA, the mental health advocacy, and my book, it really goes back to it's continuing to network. So now, building greater relationships and really being able to use your platform to see this visibility. We go back to, because the more we can start seeing it, we can start believing it. And it's great to see people like Kauji and others who are really doing their thing within their respective fields.
And there you go. What a way for you to end. Believe it, see it, and do it. So may you continue to keep doing that. And so how do people follow the journey? How do people support you, whether it's from a football perspective, whether it's mental health, whether it's, you know, anything to do with equality and so on? So how do people follow Manisha Tailor?
So my website is www.swagalicious.com. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, which is @swagalicious_.
Brilliant. We'll have all that underneath on the YouTube thing. So Manisha, we're going to wrap it up. Once again, thank you so much. And, you know, I'm looking forward to going on that journey with you, especially with South Asians in football, but more importantly, championing you as an empowering woman. So thank you once again for taking the time. I know people got a lot of value from that. Right? Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. So for the rest of you, we're going to wrap it up as we always do. I just want to make sure that if you got value there, reach out to Manisha Tailor on all of her hashtags and links on Swagalicious. All of those will be on down below underneath the YouTube channel. But please, if you have not already done so, make sure you subscribe to the Harry Singha Foundation YouTube channel, where you not only get more episodes on empowering women, you also get empowering youth. All of the links are there for all of our social media and the website. Look forward to seeing you on another episode of Empowering Women. Thank you so much.